Do you struggle with saving money? It's easy for many of us, and in fact, most of us, to just spend everything we make every single month and just really not pause and think through our longer term goals because there's so much to spend on right now. And thanks to inflation, everything has started to cost so much more than it did just a few short years ago. And so if you're having trouble saving towards your longer term goals, it's good to just stop and practice some mindfulness around that. Mindfulness is basically just being present in the moment and really being cognizant of what your values are, what your goals are, kind of taking a little bit of a bigger picture and a longer view of things and really getting in touch with what you want for yourself rather than getting sucked into a lot of marketing campaigns and shopping sprees and not really pausing and having some time to just be mindful about where you want to get in your life, because being able to save and invest for the future is a really important habit to build, and the earlier you can start the better. And so we're going to go through 5 different steps that you can take to practice more mindful saving going forward. And I hope this is helpful to you. Make sure to subscribe and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoy it. And stick around until the very end because I have a book I want to recommend to you that will also really help you with your mindfulness practice and making all of this savings a little bit easier and even more fun. I want to welcome you back to my channel. First and foremost, I'm Sarah Edens. I'm a finance coach, author, and wealth mindset researcher. And I am here to help you unlock your inner millionaire by developing a wealth mindset and by working on your finance skills, which today we're talking about mindful saving. So the number one thing that you can do for yourself as you are starting to think through savings is really stop and consider your values. And this is a good exercise to go through with anyone else that's managing money with you in the household. So it might be your partner, your boyfriend or girlfriend, your husband or wife, whoever that might be. It's a great conversation for the entire family to have of what are your financial values? What are the things that you're prioritizing in your life? You know, we all have the things we have to pay for, like a roof over our heads, food, keeping the lights on, things like that. But then there's our longer term vision for our future. And so that could be having some peace of mind by having an emergency savings account. It could be that you're ready to start saving for retirement. And really, the sooner you can start that process, the better. It could be that you've got children that you're wanting to help them with their education down the road and want to start saving towards that. So there's any number of things that, it's really good to just sit down and either think through for yourself or talk it through with your spouse or your significant other about what your goals are with your money longer term, so that then you can be more mindful about your purchases that you make day to day, and especially your big purchases. This is especially important to do before you buy a new home, before you buy a new car, because those come at a variety of price points and you can go all over the spectrum in terms of how cheap or how expensive of a car you choose to purchase. Anything you're going to be taking out a multi-year loan on basically is really important to very first and foremost sit down and think through, does this purchase align with where I'm headed with my life? I want to have a comfortable retirement. Does buying this thing align with that, or is that going to really set me back and be an obstacle on my path towards having, fewer money worries during my later years? So that's the first thing to do, is really sit down and think about your values, and you can journal those. You can just start making a list and add to it as you think of other things. But they could be values like financial security. They could be values like having free time. And so maybe you don't want to get yourself over leveraged with debt so that you're not both out having to work many hours just to fund a lifestyle that's might be impressive to other people, but isn't enjoyable to you. Just really think about it, because social media a lot of times can really define for us what happiness looks like or what success looks like. And we forget that we're each unique individuals. And so your idea of happiness and what brings you joy is different from mine, and it's different from someone else's. And so great thing to start doing there is really think through, what do you value? What brings you joy in life? And make sure your purchases are working with that and not cutting into your longer term savings goals as well. If one of your priorities is to think about your future self and practice that habit of saving for rainy days, saving for unexpected healthcare bills or vet bills, saving for home repairs, and then, of course, the big ones like college and retirement. Number two is to practice gratitude. You knew at some point we were going to talk about gratitude in one of my videos. We talk about gratitude a lot here on my channel. But that is something that can really be helpful as well, just to be able to be mindful about what you already have in your life. I think it's something that we really have to work against, buying into all of the messages from marketing and social media and advertising of, oh, you can't possibly live without this latest new thing, or you're going to be so unhappy if you don't live in a big, beautiful house, or you're going to be like so miserable unless you go on this really expensive vacation or drive this luxury vehicle, you're missing out and you're whatever. So it's really easy to unfortunately buy into those messages. And so if you can stop and really practice gratitude for what you have in your life at the moment, and it doesn't even have to be monetary things. It can be things like your health. It can be loving relationships. It can be your children. It can be your pets, whatever. It can be your job, your business, whatever brings you joy, but really start to think that through as well. And really start to focus on that. And then even if you don't have a lot of money in savings, whatever you have in savings right now, just start practicing gratitude for what you have in savings and really make a commitment to working on your budgeting skills and learning how to add more to those savings each and every month. I have a whole playlist here on YouTube that you might find helpful on that front, and it's all about budgeting, how-tos, and practical tips. And I will link to that in the description, and you can watch that at your leisure whenever you want to. But that's got a lot of practical things for you to work on as well. So just being grateful for what you do have and then continuing to grow it over time is a great next step. The third thing that you can do to be more mindful about your saving is to balance today's and tomorrow's needs out. So this can be a real challenge because, like I said before, we're being constantly bombarded with marketing and ads and things that are encouraging us to spend. And it's unfortunately very, very easy to spend these days too, thanks to Amazon and things like that, where it's just one click and it's at your front door. You don't even have to leave the house to blow your budget anymore. And so with all of that at our fingertips, it's really important to think through, what you need today and really make sure that you're getting your needs met today, but then also think through tomorrow's needs as well in terms of down the road, what are you going to need for yourself in your later years? And I think for many of us, retirement's going to look very different than it did for our parents and for our grandparents. Personally, I'm not ever planning to retire because they've even done studies on this, and they've found that people who have no work that they're doing and nothing that it doesn't even have to be work. It could even be volunteering or pursuing a hobby or something like that. But if you have nothing to do and no social connection and no kind of reason to get up in the morning, it doesn't make anybody any happier. So I think the whole kind of stereotype, I think, when we think about retirement of, retiring to the beach or the golf course, it's not necessarily that great. It might be fun for a while. I'm not saying it's not fun, but it might not be what you choose to do because you might have something you love doing and want to keep doing that for many decades to come. I know that's how I feel about what I do here in finance coaching and helping my students. So what I really want for you to think about is just to have that mindful time to think through, what do you want to do in retirement? I know it can maybe seem a long way off if it's decades away, but really start to think that through and think about how much money you think you're going to need in retirement. That's a whole question we'll get to in a minute. But being able to start thinking ahead about not spending every last dollar today, but having some that you're putting aside for savings and investing in order to grow it. Now, obviously, investing is not something I advise about on my channel, but there's lots of great options out there that you can look into on YouTube and books and podcasts, and so much great information out there. And with investing, you can lose your money just as easily as you can make it. And so it may be worth looking into hiring an investment advisor. But if you put money aside today and get it to grow for you with compound interest, that's going to help you have a future where you've got some financial freedom, and maybe where you have some choices, where you're not having to work full time at a job you don't enjoy. Maybe you're able to work full time on something you really love, and it's all about what we're working on. I think a lot of times when people don't like their jobs, retirement can sound great because they don't like their job too much. But if you're doing something you love, it doesn't even feel like work. And so, even if you're putting time and effort and energy and things into it, it doesn't feel the same way. It's something that keeps you energized and gives your life meaning and purpose. So, something to think about there. The fourth step for mindful spending is to make sure your savings are earning interest. So, there are a lot of different ways to do this. And the ways that you can do it without getting into the stock market are things like looking for a high yield savings account. And those often can get you about 4%, I think is what they're averaging right now, about 4% interest on your savings, just to have it sitting in your savings account. So if your bank doesn't offer that, you can shop it around and see what other banks out there do offer that. You can look into certificates of deposit or CDs. Those will often offer a little bit more interest than just your average savings account. The caveat to that is that you can't withdraw the money without a penalty before the certain amount of time that that CD is set for, whether it's 3 years or 5 years. So you want to think about, don't lock your money into that until you're absolutely sure you're not going to need it for 3 to 5 years, so you don't have to lose money on a penalty that way, because that will obviously cost you most of what you might have made in interest over the time you own the CD. Then there's obviously investing, like we talked about before, which while it can make you money, it can also lose you money. So really important to have solid financial advisor investment advice on that front before you just dive in and try to DIY it. Do your homework first. And other vehicles that you can have, like, if you own a home, you're obviously building equity in your home, things like that. So there's a lot of different ways to have your savings earning you money and not just sitting there. I think that's especially important now with inflation being what it is, because that's making everything inflation is not the saver's friend. So it basically means that our dollars today are going to be worth less tomorrow or next month or next year, with the way inflation is kind of eating into our purchasing power. So it's very, very important to keep your savings kind of at pace, at least with inflation, to find whatever either interest-bearing accounts or investments you choose to go with that will keep your money kind of moving at the same speed as inflation, or hopefully faster, so that your money is not just sitting there losing value, because that's not what you want. And then the fifth and final thing is to consider working with a retirement advisor if you need help when you kind of stop and think through your longer term financial goals and retirement is decades away and you're not sure where to start and you're not sure how much money you're going to need. There are people out there who specifically all they do all day long is retirement advising and retirement planning. And so while there are free resources that you can use online that can help you kind of start to get a feel for how much you need to be putting into your savings and investments now, so that you have a good nest egg by the time you're ready to either retire or change jobs or work part-time, or for all of us, there obviously comes a time where we're not able to work anymore and we may need some support and some care, and have to be in, say, assisted living or something like that, which those are insanely pricey to have take up residence in a assisted living facility, depending on all of that. I know it's not fun to think about getting old or having health problems or whatever, but I feel like retirement planning in particular is like the ultimate form of self-care, because you're taking care of yourself down the road in those later years when you're going to be needing that financial security, and thanking yourself so much for having thought ahead, so that you're not in a situation where money is a real stressor right at the time when maybe it's hard for you to work, or you're competing with a lot of younger applicants for the same jobs, because unfortunately there is some prejudice in the hiring market against the elderly who are trying to get back into the jobs market, things like that. And so it's a great form of self-care to start planning for your retirement now. You can look at working with a retirement advisor about that. And then that'll just help you come up with a game plan of exactly what you need to be putting towards that time in your life. Because, our older version of ourselves can seem like such a stranger. I know for myself, it's really hard sometimes to imagine myself being in my 70s and 80s and 90s. And, with longevity being what it is, who knows how long we'll be living. I think a lot of us in our generation will be living a lot longer than our parents and our grandparents did, just thanks to modern innovations in healthcare and healthcare technology, and just the more awareness that we all have about the roles that health and fitness and things like that play into taking care of ourselves. And so for many of us, we may be looking at living many more decades, and that's wonderful and a great way to be able to enjoy more years of our life. But we want to make sure that we've got money during those decades as well, whether that's coming in from dividends on investments, rent from investment properties, interest from our interest-bearing savings accounts, money from part-time jobs, we're still working, whatever the case may be, but we don't want to hit those years with no money. And so that's really, really crucial to, as much as you're able to stop thinking about your future older self as a stranger and start thinking of that as someone that you want to take care of and provide for now, so that that's not a stressor down the road. And depending on where you live in the world, you may live in a country where there's a lot of good social benefits for the elderly and retired, and that's wonderful if you have that as well. But I would say, don't count on the government to take care of you in your old age, because governments around the world are dealing with their own economic struggles and troubles. So don't count on programs like Social Security, for example, to be the thing you're going to be depending on when you're old, because it's so, so important to be financially independent and not need government support. If it's there, wonderful, but not be counting on it. And be proactive and make a plan now, because it's really interesting. They did a survey a couple of years ago asking people what their biggest financial regrets were. And number one regret that people had was not starting to save early enough for retirement. So whatever stage in life you are, wherever you're watching this video, it's obviously never too late to start saving for retirement, but the earlier the better, even if that feels like a very long way off. All right, so I promised you I would give you a book recommendation. Here it is. This is my favorite book when it comes to really practicing both gratitude and mindfulness. And it's The Magic. It's in the Secret series by Rhonda Byrne. And this book is just absolutely game-changing, because if you really want something that's going to help you just practice mindfulness, practice gratitude for everything you currently have in your life, this is the book to work through. It's a 30-day gratitude practice, and it's got journaling exercises and some fun interactive things that you can do. But I would highly recommend this book, because one of the steps here for mindful saving is being grateful for the money you currently have in savings, and really too for your ability to continue to make more money and for your investments to perform well and all of these things. And that doesn't happen by chance. That's all skills that you learn and build over time. But this is a really good mindset book for working on gratitude. So I would highly recommend that. Well, thank you so much for being here until the very end. It's always such a joy to spend time with you here on YouTube. And let me know in the comments kind of how you are doing with your savings, and if that's something that's challenging for you, if you've noticed a change over the last couple of years with inflation, maybe cutting into your ability to save. I know that's been an issue I've been dealing with the last couple of years with prices on everything going up so much. It's just been more challenging to save, and just has to be something that I have to be really structured about to make sure it's still happening. So let me know what you're going through on that front as well. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for joining me, and I will see you again soon in my next video.